So back when I made my video talking about all my records that I hold on LOLMAPS, I mentioned that anytime you want to try and set a record, you've got a lot of really strong competition no matter what map you're going for. And one name you're going to find on just about every map you try hunting is the Hitmen, also known as H1. These guys hold a huge portion of all the records on LOLMAPS, and even in Trackmania 2 in general. Fixor alone holds over 1,000 first place spots on LOLMAPS. So anytime you're playing on LOLMAPS, if you see someone with the Hitmen name, it's not too surprising when one of them casually takes a deady one during the 5 minutes you get on a map. Well, I decided to go digging and figure out what this team is all about. So this is the story of Trackmania 2's greatest team, the Hitmen. It all started back in 2020. The new Trackmania had already been announced, and a lot of teams were disbanding or getting ready to move over to the new Trackmania game, but there were a few that wanted to stick around and keep playing TM2. So these two guys named Bikugnan and Perchignan had both been a part of teams that had just disbanded, and decided that it was time to start their own team of people who will be sticking around in TM2. Now there's a lot of different types of teams and clans around Trackmania, but the purpose of this one was to specifically hunt certain maps. The name Hitman with a number 1 refers to putting a hit out on certain players or certain maps to go snipe their world record. The goal is to get as many Dedimania number 1s as possible. And if they decided they didn't like a certain player, then the Hitmen would get together and get to work taking all of their world records. So it started with Bikugnan and Perchignan, then they picked up Acid Rain, who was also on a team that just disbanded, and then they picked up Ruben and Fixor just a few days later, Rom and Krustabat, then they added DXSN, then they added Ogre, then over the course of the next couple years, they added Tourist, Iris, Not Too Shaggy, Helt, Kenny Main, Tuca, Walton, Ecovico, Eurodie, Thugula, The Sweetie Man, Flame, and around the end of 2022, they added their final member, Artis. After that, they closed recruitment until a couple years later, and they recently just added Herb. Now, everybody on the team has a very high general skill, but some people specialize a little bit more into certain categories. Like Rom over here likes to come up with really crazy shortcuts. He's also contributed maps towards Kakius Kaki. Krustabat does a lot of the same. Then people like Tourist and Artis are some of the greatest RPG players in the world right now. Fixor is just great at taking any world record. Iris has a talent for calling a map impossible, saying a map makes no sense, and then setting a world record immediately afterwards. And Acid has a real talent for downvoting every map he plays. Now with this full roster, they've achieved over 9,000 collective Dedi 1s, and one big chunk of that came from a map series known as Sportix, which is a huge series of community maps by Yanix. Now I recently had the chance to get onto a call with a bunch of the guys from Hitmen and ask them a bunch of questions. And so while I play the highlights from that call, I'm going to be showing this montage that Tourist put together of all of the replays of these Sportix world records. They're extremely addicting to watch, and I highly recommend going over to Tourist's channel to watch them all. So, how did the team actually get started? Like, what was the point of it in the beginning?
I think the primary reason was he wanted to put every good player on TM2 grinding LOLMAPS, because it was just before TM20 came out.
So Hitman was basically started around LOLMAPS, like that was the main server that everybody was on?
It's like I'm not coming from the LOL community. I was like just starting playing LOLMAPS when they invited me. It's like only like 3 months, so...
Right, and I imagine that most of the team had been playing TMNF before TM2, like everyone's been around a long time.
Not
Actually,
really.
that's not the case. I think most of us have started with TM2.
But we were kids back then.
I've started watching Trackmania right after TM2 came out, and I started playing it like 3 years after that.
I mean, TM2 has been out for like 7 years before TM20, so I guess that's plenty of time for everybody to get good before the team started. So was it just like anyone who was overperforming in LOLMAPS, you would kind of just invite him in or give him a challenge to get invited in?
I guess so. Well, the first one was Acid, was like a old teammate of them. That's why he got invited.
When it started, we were in a team called POS, and so there were some people that I hadn't met before, but they were French, and so they invited me in their team. And there was Banano, which is a great and, let's say, famous mapper. And then the team disbanded, and with Biku we decided to create a team to stay on TM2 and start hunting some maps, some series or some players. And Acid was one of the players in the host team, so we invited him first, and then we invited some people that were playing on LOLMAPS, like Krusty, Helt, maybe in 2000 17 or so, Iris. The first player that were invited, we were willing to constitute a small team of players, so they didn't have to beat some strong times or to get in the team. We just invited them, and then at some point we were like 11, 12 in the team, so in my opinion it was kind of a lot. At first I didn't want the team to be sort of a clan like FWO or LOL or Frog, and so we decided to only accept really good players and only if they could beat some strong times. For example, Herb joined recently, like 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
And so he had to beat either 2 maps that we were missing on 2 series, or he had to beat like 5 times by Riolu. And so he actually beat like the 2 records that we were missing in like maybe an hour or 2. So we were kind of surprised.
He's crazy good. He's crazy.
Yeah,
He
it's great.
performed really well in the Community Cup.
I mean, actually, I think it was like Herb was willing to join for like half a year, and we recently has given him that challenge. Because we didn't want to let more players in, because we thought like, yeah, it's enough. But then looking at team stats, half of the team was AFK for like a couple of months. So no daddy was beaten, but I mean low amount of daddies were beaten by month. Because as you could see, Cybrid, we do have statistics of how many daddies we get per month, and by half a year we make a statistic on how many total daddies we have.
So how would you say that, like, what are the different types of teams? Like, how is Hitman different from, like, Fastest Way Only or something?
The point of the team initially, it was to specifically hunt some people and some series of maps. And so on the Discord, if you're not a member of the team, you cannot see which people we are hunting. When we created the team, it was active, but now it's been 4 or 5 years. And so, you know, we are not playing that much anymore, or we are playing on LOLMAPS, but we still have some, let's say, people, series of maps that we could hunt.
So I guess the whole point of Hitman is to basically put a hit out on a certain player and then try and go take all of his world records. So who are some people that you've gone after, and like what made you want to go after them?
Because we also entered Riolu, or I mean, you know the reason. I was on, not always for, because people were shit talking or stuff like that. Not always.
Yeah, Hyolu, because the time online are legit, so he had really good time because he is a good player. And other people, some of them are, let's say, old players from LOLMAPS. For example, we had Takujix. So Takujix played on LOLMAPS 10 years ago, and so he had some daddies left. So we just type his nickname on Daddymania, and we can see what are the maps, and then we add them on the server. And so Takujix, there was also Madrola. Madrola was also playing on LOLMAPS, and I think that he was in BCS.
Yeah. Matrola was in BCS.
So I recently just watched the whole 600 Sporty X series maps. Like, you guys took the world record on all 600 maps. So what was the story on that one?
It's not 600. It's more of them. It's like 800 or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Sporty X as well.
Every map.
Yeah.
Sporty
Editing the
XD
videos.
and Sporty X community maps.
Who were the hardest people to hunt in that series? I noticed there were a lot of very common names, like Nexo and Yanix and Trasher, a couple of Riolu. Like, which ones were the most difficult, would you say?
I guess we could agree, like all of us could agree, that some of the Yayas, Jaja, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, Jaja.
Some of Jaja's records were extremely hard to beat. I remember on Sportix 10.
Oh, not that map. Yeah.
Not that
That's
much?
a while.
But the Sportix series, there were a lot of time that are not especially hunted because some of them were played during the Sportix when Yanix organized them, and then the maps were played a bit on his server. But so some of them are hunted, like the first one with Yaya, Nexo, and some of them a bit less. So it was mostly to achieve all the records more than looking for a really difficult challenge. Because if we want to go for a more difficult challenge, we could, for example, hunt a
Video
series
maps.
of maps from DVD, because DVD's maps are from like 15 years ago, and there are some really strong times. But on some maps, problem is that if you do not have the MP3 physics, you cannot beat the records. Some maps are still like you have to clip a checkpoint, but clipping in on the MP3 version of the game is different.
So there's some records that seem impossible to beat because of a patch that updated.
For example,
Pretty much,
if
yeah.
you're hunting a guy that was playing during MP3 and he's got some bug finish, it's kind of doom. So the only way to do it is to play on the MP3 version of the game. So someone actually revived the MP3 version, and you can go on a server at the map, and it would actually update the Dedimanias on MP4. So you can still beat the map with bug finish.
I think his name is Sherlock.
Skorlock, yeah.
Yeah, Scarlet. Yeah, okay. Give him credits.
For most of the hunting now, it seems like all of the top players have moved on to the next game. Do you feel like you guys are just kind of coming in and cleaning up all the records that they left behind, not really expecting any of them to come back for them?
Some of the records, the people just left the game and they aren't even playing TM20. Some of other people we are hunting, they are maybe still playing, but not that much. Like they said before, if someone truly like insulting us, we would check his Dedimania and see how many records he has, and so we would hunt like the 10 or 20 maps he's got to clean his Dedimania.
2 people, there was like 200 maps, I believe. But for one person, there wasn't really a challenge. Those maps were basically just driven by him, so beating that wasn't that hard. But it was the amount still. But yeah, we cleared basically the leaderboards. When you would check the Demania for rank 1 on that person, he basically wouldn't have any left.
So who are some very active people today that, let's say that there's some high-level people, somebody like CTR or Sheena or something. Do you typically try to compete with them, or do you try to invite them onto the team?
Friendly competition?
Yeah, I mean, we had a discussion like in between us. There was a discussion about that actually, and we came up to the conclusion that if we would invite every good guy, every good good player to the team, we wouldn't have any competition, and it would be just no fun.
It would kind of ruin the feeling of seeing Hitman on the top of every leaderboard if every time you see somebody on the top of the leaderboard that wasn't in Hitman, you could just invite him to the team and then just take all those records.
Yeah.
And even for Herb, I was like, we are like 20, 21. When we reached 20 people, I was like, we shouldn't invite anyone because we are really too many. But because half of the team is AFK, because it's been 4 years, we still propose to Herb to join. And the guys on LOLMAPS, the leaderboards we are not that much present in the leaderboards. They created the only noobs team, so now it's their name that appears on the leaderboards and that is competing with us.
I have talked with Olga recently, and we were actually discussing about that, and it was like now in TM2, when you go to like play random maps, there's a high chance you either spot an H1 daddy or only noobs daddy, because now those two, like H1 and only noobs, are the biggest now, and has the like basically only noobs took the rest of good players that were still on TM2.
Yeah, it seems like it. They've got a pretty stacked lineup already, but it almost feels just like a joke team. Like, I don't know that it'll stick around, kind of like the last joke team that Ogre started.
He said he's gonna keep it. And there was a date actually that he's gonna keep it until 2026. I don't know if that's true actually, or if he was joking around, because I actually asked him the same if he's gonna keep the tag for like 3 to 4 months and then just do something else. and he said that he's actually gonna keep it.
Recently, there was the Community Cup, and it seemed like there were quite a few hitmen that came back to the game to compete in that. How was the experience going up against people like Harsus and Fip?
Well, I mean, we played against VIP like a lot of times, so wasn't something special. But I guess Arthur's, yeah, he came from TRF. That was nice seeing new faces coming to play TM2.
But again, the Community Cup. So on this cup, the one player that came back to TM2 was Walton. So Walton is playing on TM20. When the cup started, we pinged him to have more competition, and then he left. He went back on TM20.
Yeah, it almost seems hard to compare people's skills when everyone's so spread out, because you got people playing TMNF and then others on TM20. Who are some players like outside of TM2 that you would say are some of the best in the world? Some people that you think you wouldn't be able to hunt?
Actually, I'd say a lot of them. It depends on the type of maps they play. But like obviously all the tech guys, because the players that are strong on tech, they are strong on everything, and well, maybe not dirt. Basically, all the guys that are competing on Team 20 that are in tech teams like Numilops, HPD, THC, all of these guys would probably have strong records. But again, it's different to play in a competition and just play on a server. Some guys in the FWO teams, like I'd say, like for example, FS would be better at hunting some maps than us. But again, it depends on the style. In our team, no one is especially strong driving some dirt. If we take each player, for example, so I would be good driving LOL Sport and short maps, short FS maps. The same with Biku, with some skill hunting RPG. Then we have tourist and artists. RPG guys, Rom is more like tricks.
Yeah, I'm surprised Rom isn't in Fastest Way Only with some of the clips I've seen of him.
Yeah, well, he did try. I think he tried the same trick as Biku did to get into FWO. But there's not much cut around still.
But the Sportix, the style is really basic. It's like 15 seconds maps, a bit of road, a bit of tricks, a bit of transition. So everyone is good on these maps. Then some guys are better at tech, like Fixor.
Fixer and Walton, I would say. Walton is pretty good at tech.
So I can just look directly at who has the most records, but will you say that like Fixor and Tourist are kind of like above everybody else as far as being the best at setting records?
Yeah.
I mean, Tourist is one of the best on RPG, if I remember correctly, in the world actually. Like he, in every competition he was actually in, he would be in the top places, as far as I remember actually. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, he would be in the top 5 for sure, because the other player would be, well, Artis. Artis is also in the top 5. Then you have Scandia,
Portfio,
Hazard, and, well, all of the guys in the Milkway team, but I do not know them, so I don't have their nickname.
So I noticed that the team doesn't seem to hunt campaign maps very much. Is there a reason for that, or do you just not like having to focus so long on one single map?
Well, you were talking about players that would be better than us in terms of we would not be able to get their records. But for the campaign, it's kind of the same, because the times are really hunted and they are very old, and so it would take us too much time to actually get a map. Only Biku hunted one of them to get in the FWO team because he found the cut.
it still took him a lot of time to get it.
And it's not really our type of maps, because campaign is like 30 seconds and, well, it's Nadio map. I do not enjoy TM2 Nadio maps, but I played some campaign on TM20 and tried to hunt some like FS map, 12 seconds maps. And I could get in the top 10 in like the first week or so, and then I would just stop.
So yeah, what would you guys say is like the biggest achievement or the hardest things that the team has pulled off together?
Sportix.
Yeah, Sportix, definitely. The amount of time we put into that.
I'd say that it took us, I don't know, when we were actively playing, maybe 2 months.
Nah, it was way more.
Playing 800 maps was long, and as as I said, some records were not really hunted. So on some maps, we played them to set a correct time. So we would beat the previous records in like 5 minutes, but we would continue to play a bit to improve. And some of the maps, it took us, some maps hours because some of them were really hunted.
So if there's ever maps where a hitman holds the record, do you guys ever hunt each other?
We try not to.
So
Basically, if there is a daddy that someone already got from H1, we count it as a team's effort, and we don't really hunt each other's records.
Yeah, I guess the whole goal is just to have H1 in the number 1 spot.
If we
Yeah,
play
there
on
is-
maps, we do not care. If we play on our server, if the map is cool, I would just play the map. And if I see that someone got the records and the map is no more interesting, I would delete the map from the server so no one would play it again.
Are there any more interesting stories from the team's history?
Maybe one. When we organized our first cup with like 50 maps, a player joined. I couldn't remember the name.
Liam,
was-
972. Yeah, that story. Okay, yeah, go on.
This guy was really strong, and we were like, I've never seen this nickname before. And so we invited the guy in the team, and it was actually Tourist with another nickname. And I think that he decided to play under this nickname because he left maybe the RPG team and he didn't want to be recognized, so he changed his name.
So he was already on H1 at the time?
Yeah, but
I
then he
mean,
told
not
us
really.
that-
It was kind of different. Milky Way guys reached out to us that they did their own investigation on who's that Liam guy is, because Biku has invited Liam to Liam as tourist. He invited him to play RPG Brawl at the time. And the Milky Way guys were kind of surprised on how well does he play, and they were suspicious. So they did run their own investigation, and they found out that it was actually tourist. When we confronted him with how it is, we at first we have kicked out tourist from the team for lying to us, and then after some time, after like talking about that to him, we invited him again, but as tourist now. That's how tourist actually got into the team.
we needed a RPG player in the team.
So have any of the map's records been beaten since you've hunted them? Do you have to go back and redo them?
Pretty sure we would have to. I know at one point there was frog guys were also on the hunt. I don't know if they were specifically going for our maps that we have already hunted, but we have asked them to stop until if we would end, then they could do whatever they wanted.
Yeah, and the other case is like, for example, if we hunt someone, maybe a month or 2 months later, we can check on Trackmania and if the guy has some daddy's back. So sometimes we had to beat some new records from the guy.
Now just to finish things off, I'll tell one funny story I had. So a little while ago, I had created this new map and put it on the LOLMAPS server. The whole premise is to do this huge loop around, and then at the very end, you're supposed to jump over the finish and then drive through it in reverse. And so we were playing this map during public time, and Fixor was also in the game too. And so after a couple minutes had passed, he was saying, I don't understand this map at all. And so I decided to spectate him, and that's when I realized he most likely plays with cars turned off. So while you're supposed to take this jump and then go around this big loop in a clockwise rotation, he was taking a right, going off these bumpers, rotating 180 degrees, and then trying to do the whole map backwards. Now, I had never really anticipated anyone trying something like this. This was the complete wrong way to do it, but he was doing a really good job. And then about a minute later, he said, oh, okay, I see the correct way to go now. And then, of course, he took the world record just a few minutes later. But I just thought it was so funny, because like, even when this guy is so confused, he's still really impressive. But that is the story of the Hitmen, Trackmania 2's most prestigious team.